the recently concluded MIT Sloan Innovation Conference, one of the celebrated African startups was from Nigeria in the healthcare space. Emergency Response Africa was awarded $10,000 at the conference for its work using technology to, as was said there, disrupt healthcare. Joining us to discuss further, Folake Owodunni, who is the CEO and co-founder of Emergency Response Africa. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Congratulations on the recognition at the MIT Sloan. So what's that conference about, and what were you awarded for?
Yeah, so the Africa Innovate Conference was put on by the MIT Sloan School of Management's African Business Club. So they are MBA students who essentially put on this conference every year with the goal of bringing together startups, stakeholders that are working to progress Africa. And their objective with the pitch competition is to spotlight 5 of those startups, give them an opportunity to be in front of stakeholders and potentially win some prize money. So we were very fortunate to be selected as a finalist and then ultimately emerge the winner.
Great stuff. What's the $10,000 going to go towards?
Good question. So, every startup has so many needs, so it could go to a host of different things, but I think we're going to be focused on using it to expand our motorcycle medic network.
So, well, before I get to that, you recognize somewhere, you get recognized everywhere. The NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center recognized you and a bunch of other startups. So what's that about?
Yeah, so the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial, I think we all know NASDAQ in the financial world, but they have an entrepreneurial center that's really geared towards helping companies to grow. And so we were selected as part of a cohort of SDG-focused entrepreneurs, so those that are working on SDGs 3 and 4, so good health, as well as education. And the goal is they pair us with an executive coach as well as a set of mentors to achieve a milestone. So this is a milestone that we all agree on. And the idea is your milestone is something that if you are successful in achieving it, will help move your business forward and also drive impact in line with those SDGs.
Okay, so you're like incentivized to make sure you meet the goals.
100%.
Great stuff. Okay, so you mentioned emergency motorbikes. What do you guys do over at Emergency Response Africa?
Yep, so we are a health tech company, and our goal is to make sure that when people have a medical emergency, they get the help they need as quickly as possible. In this environment, there's no 911 to call. Now, we do have, some emergency numbers, and sometimes they work really well, and sometimes they don't. What we want to do is transform that by making sure that anyone who has an emergency can get help as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And the way that we do that is we have a network of first responders, ambulances, and hospitals, all connected by technology, so that if someone's reaching out to us, we are sending the closest available unit to them, and they can get that help within some minutes.
So is there an app and individuals and organizations are subscribing to it?
Yes, so there is an app. You're not necessarily subscribing to the app, you're subscribing to the service. So we have 2 ways that people can reach us. We have a toll-free number. As you can imagine, not everybody has internet access all the time. So we want to make sure that people can reach us. So there's a 24/7 toll-free number that's always working. But we do have a mobile app, Signal by ERA. It's available on all the app stores, and essentially allows you to, with the push of a button, submit a request, reach our dispatchers. It sends us your exact location, and it makes it much easier for a response team to be able to find you. And yes, individuals, families subscribe. We also have corporate clients. We partner with insurance companies, all with the goal of just getting this to as many people as possible.
All right, so there's a lot of traffic here in Lagos, particularly. Maybe that's why you mentioned the motorcycles earlier from MIT Sloan. So how do you get past that?
So we pioneered the concept of the motorcycle medic in Nigeria, and this really just came from a place of looking at our environment. How do you get an ambulance to someone where, just gridlock, nobody is moving? And, we have all these dispatch riders that, take your packages. Why should you be able to get your pizza order in, 20 minutes, but it takes an ambulance, an hour and a half to get to you?
Right.
And so it made sense for us to say, what if we put a medic on a motorcycle? We give them a portable kit. They have their jump bag that they travel with. They have a defibrillator that they move with. They have even oxygen, portable oxygen that they move with. It means that they can get to the scene quickly. They can cut through traffic, get to the scene, and they can start to provide first aid while an ambulance is still on the way. And that turns out to be really helpful.
You're right. People get very angry if their pizzas don't arrive on time. So good point. What about rural areas? Are you mostly concentrated in urban areas, or what's the strategy for the rural parts of the
Yeah,
nation?
so right now we are in urban areas. We're in Lagos, in Abuja, in Port Harcourt, and we have a couple of other cities as well. We will get to rural areas, but we're not there right now. The rural areas are just a different type of setup. I know there was recently something viral about Ogun State and the sort of tricycle. It's interesting because that was one of the things that we wanted to actually kick off with. But then we realized in an urban setting like Lagos, that's not really ideal. Those types of vehicles are perfect for rural settings, and they really should be complementary to an existing ambulance system. So we'll get there.
Yeah, great stuff. You're mentioning all these different states, so of course these are run by state governments, and you're a private entity. Any collaborations with governments at all at any different levels?
Yeah, so that's something that we started working on. It's really been awesome to see some very forward-thinking state governments that are interested and engaging with us to work with. So one example is last year we signed an MOU with Ekiti State. We're providing them with our technology so that they can actually coordinate the Ekiti State ambulance service. There are a number of other states that we're in conversations with now. Absolutely, this is something where there should be a connection between the public and private sector. Nobody can deliver this on their own. Certainly, private sector can't do it alone, but the government also can't. And so if there's a world where both parties can work together, think of the 911 system, right? That number, 911, is facilitated and provided by the government, but who's behind it? Who's fulfilling? Those are all private players. So there's really, really a world where both public and private sector can work together to deliver this.
Final question for you. What does, this question, maybe I shouldn't be asking it, but if you can in a minute, what does Nigeria's healthcare need right now? Is it better internet service, or what does it need? You see all the headlines.
There's so many things.
Right.
I mean, where does one begin? But I think if I had to pick one, I would say aggregate demand, right? I'll use, emergency sector as an example. There's so many, we did a survey some time ago, 300 people. We found out that just 8% of people would arrive at an emergency department using a professional service. The rest is, your taxi, your car, all of that. In Lagos, at that same period, the Lagos State Ambulance Service did maybe between 8,000 and 12,000 cases. So if you can imagine that is the 8%, that means that there's at least 150,000 cases that were not in any way attended to by a professional service. That is huge demand and certainly huge market potential. And I think what is often missing is the fact that we don't pull all of those things together and therefore make it easier and profitable for someone to actually get into a business, deliver these services cost effectively to the population, but still run profitably. So I think if we can figure out ways to aggregate that demand, finance, right? The Health Insurance Act is a big part of that as well. Those will be huge, huge changes.
Great stuff. Thank you so much for talking to us, Folake Owodunni, CEO, co-founder of Emergency Response Africa. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.